for 515 Fantasy Football.
I know football.
Are you ready for some football?
Domination on Sundays begins with listening to these guys on Thursdays.
You ready for this?
Nearly 40 years of fantasy football experience between them.
Yeah!
One is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, husband and father, entering his 17th year of fantasy competition. Brian Eikenberry. The other, also a proud husband and father, is one of the winningest fantasy minds in the state. Celebrating 23 years of excellence, Andy Hall.
Let's get the game on!
It's showtime. The 515 Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts, Brian Eikenberry and Andy Hall.
Week number 12 is upon us. The window of opportunity between now and playoff time is closing very quickly, my friends. Now is the time to dedicate yourself to making this happen. Now is the time to strap in and decide you want this. Now is the time you remind yourself it doesn't matter what happened in the regular season. The only thing that matters is that you get in. Get in. And anything can and usually does happen. Are you ready to win a fantasy championship? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the show that's going to help you get there. 515 Fantasy Football. Andy Hall alongside my main man, Brian Eikenberry. Happy Turkey Day, my friend.
It is going to be a great Turkey Day. There's going to be lots of great football. And like you said, we're in sniffing distance of the playoffs, and I could not be chomping at the bit because I personally am on that tipping point in a couple of leagues where I need to win one of my last two games here to lock my spot in, and I could be a total point victim, so you never know. There's always that thing you got to look out for. Our grading matchups from last week, we took another one on the chin here, but we finished in the plus 24, so not bad considering all of the injuries and the late calls that people had that took them out of the starting lineups.
Yeah, a lot of those injuries which happened early on in games, which is very frustrating when that happens. But that is the world we live in, unfortunately. No matter how you found us, iTunes, Stitcher, the Libsyn website, or on our radio home at 1350 ESPN Radio in Des Moines. Thanks for listening. Busy hour full of matchups, tidbits of knowledge that'll help you earn another W. Before we begin, you can find us on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football, Twitter at 515 Fantasy, and you can contact us anytime via email, 515fantasy@gmail.com. We begin, as we always do, with some headlines of fantasy note. The Browns, Brian,
Ouch.
have benched Johnny Manziel after video of him partying over the bye has surfaced. He is now relegated to third-string duties. Josh McCown takes over in Cleveland. I don't even know what to make of this other than, Johnny Football, you are a mess.
I take great personal offense to this as he is so inconsiderate. I put him in my bargain bin last week, so you could go out there and snag him up before anybody realized that he was going to be facing the Ravens. And then he goes out and does that kind of crap, especially. And here's the thing. On the outside, it's not a big deal. But when you come out of rehab and you have all these other problems, he's all but gone. He has played his last game in the NFL.
That's interesting. I don't know if I agree with that. I think there are teams desperate enough to give the guy a shot, and there are teams that can rehab an image for a guy, but his days in Cleveland may be numbered. We shall see. Moving on with more headlines. Patriots wide receiver Danny Amendola underwent an MRI to his injured knee, appeared to have avoided something really bad, which is great news for Danny. He may even play this coming Sunday night. It's kind of a 50-50 proposition at this point. The Broncos' Emmanuel Sanders has been dealing with a high ankle sprain. He is questionable for Sunday. Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll doesn't expect Marshawn Lynch to play Sunday. He's got that abdomen issue, has yet to be completely ruled out, but again, it's sounding as if not only could he miss this coming week, he could miss the rest of the season theoretically if this is what people are dreading, which is that sports hernia injury. Falcons running back Devontae Freeman, fantasy's #1 scoring back, is in the league's concussion protocol. Fortunately, sounds like things are looking okay, at least thus far. He could play on Sunday. Ravens running back Justin Forsett expected to miss the remainder of the season with a broken arm. Quarterback Joe Flacco tore his ACL and MCL. He's also done for the season. It's Matt Schaub time in Baltimore, as if things weren't bad enough there already. Jets quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick already named the starter for Week 12 despite Week 11 the benching he received last weekend. Cornerback Darrelle Revis may not play this weekend due to a concussion he suffered last weekend. Texans head coach Bill O'Brien confirmed Brian Hoyer will start at quarterback for the Texans this Sunday. This just coming down. Panthers wide receiver Philly Brown doubtful for this weekend's game. Ted Ginn, however, is probable. Eagles quarterback Sam Bradford officially cleared of the league's concussion protocol. So will it be Sanchez? Will it be Bradford? I think you're 6 in one hand, a half dozen in the other, Brian. What do you think?
Yeah, you have to think about all of this stuff from not just the chances, but your fantasy football roster. And you really need to think about, are you going to roll the dice or not? Are you in that position where you can gamble? And if you make these decisions, you have to make them err on the side of caution.
All right, so you think what? You think Bradford will be named the starter?
I think so, because it's just going to go. Chip Kelly's done.
Oh, I think so too.
What has he got to lose? Yeah, Sanchez, but that was terrible. So they're going to try out Bradford. At least he completed some passes to his own team.
Well, here's the thing about Sanchez. He's actually not a half-bad fantasy quarterback. He's just a terrible real quarterback, which I guess is the problem here. But you're right about Chip Kelly, and here's the craziest thing of all. The Philadelphia Eagles still have a very decent possibility of winning their division.
That's ridiculous.
And all of this stuff is going on. So anyway, an interesting situation to keep our eyes on. Staying in Philadelphia, running back Ryan Matthews, he may not be ready for this weekend's game. Remember, he sat out Week 11 with a concussion. Tight end Zach Ertz, unlikely to be cleared of the league's concussion protocol by game time, so he's not looking like he's going to go either. Bears tight end Martellus Bennett dealing with a rib injury, which could mean more Zach Miller in Chicago. Speaking of Chicago, Matt Forte should be ready to play by Thursday. He's missed a few weeks. And the Broncos have named Brock Osweiler the starter for Week 12's game versus New England. So I'm going to start, Brian, with the 3 Thanksgiving matchups. And Philadelphia-Detroit is the first of them. Mark Sanchez is a C+ in this game if he starts. If it happens to be Sam Bradford, I'm not sure I even give him an upgrade. Perhaps just consider them both C+. The Lions have looked much improved, actually, over the past couple of weeks, holding Aaron Rodgers to only garbage time success, Derek Carr to less than 10 fantasy points in standard leagues. This week, they'll get a look at who? We don't know. Sanchez or Bradford. Neither of them lighting the world on fire in recent weeks. And, you look at Sanchez, as we mentioned, a plus matchup versus Tampa last week, and he looked god-awful. The running game, DeMarco Murray is an A in this one. Detroit gives up over 116 yards per game on the ground, has allowed a league-high 15 rushing touchdowns this season. Murray has been accused of a lack of effort as of late by some, so he'll want to get it going in this excellent matchup. Darren Sproles is a B-. He continues to contribute in the passing game and is capable of an explosive play or two at any time, as we've seen. On to the receivers, Jordan Matthews, a B. If the Eagles want to have any level of success through the air, they're going to have to target Matthews more than the 4 targets he saw last Sunday. They should correct that against a Lions defense that is middle of the road, but improving. Josh Huff, I give a C- to. Scored on his only catch last week from 39 yards out. Also his only target of the game, which doesn't bode well for his chances going forward. And I mentioned Zach Ertz, probably out this weekend. Brent Selleck, I give a B- to in this matchup. He led the Eagles with 7 catches for 79 yards on 10 targets last week. Became involved big time once Ertz went down with that injury, and that should continue here. On to the Lions side, Matthew Stafford is a B. I'm tempted to give him a better grade because the Lions simply can't run the ball, but I'm also concerned that the Eagles have 12 INTs on the season, and Stafford is prone to turnovers. For the runners, Amir Abdullah is a C in this matchup. Despite Philly getting lit up by Doug Martin and company last week, I don't see the Lions having the same amount of success here. Despite the Eagles allowing over 128 yards per game to opposing runners, they've only given up 3 rushing touchdowns on the season. That's it. Theo Riddick is a C-. He's involved in passing downs only. I give him a slight bump if you're in a PPR league. I don't like Joique Bell here at all either. He's on the bench. As far as the passing game goes and the receivers, Calvin Johnson's an A. The Eagles are ranked 30th in the league against opposing wide receivers, allowing over 28 fantasy points per game to the position in standard scoring leagues. The Lions need to feed him more. Golden Tate, I give a B to. He saw a team-high 11 targets last Sunday. He hauled in 8 passes for 73 yards. I'm leaving all Lions tight ends on the bench this week. Any objection to any of that, Brian?
Yeah, I'm not. I don't mean to be a homer here, but
you're gonna be.
But I'm gonna be, because you look at what Matt Stafford does on Thanksgiving, and this guy's a champ. He is just one of those guys who cuts it up on Thanksgiving. They always have. They always play exceptional on Thanksgiving. The defense may not be playing, but go back, look at the stats. I was listening to some other radio, some national shows, and they were talking about his history on Thanksgiving, and it's his day. It's the Lions' 76th Thanksgiving Day game. He will make it happen.
All right. Love when we disagree, Brian. Moving on to Carolina at Dallas, the second game of the day. Cam Newton is a B in this matchup. The Cowboys have been top 10 against the pass this season, allowing only 231 yards per game and 11 touchdowns on the season. Cam and crew will beat the boys on the ground primarily. Speaking of the ground game, Jonathan Stewart is an A. If you want to beat Dallas, you do it with your running game. Stewart is in line for a ton of work here on Thanksgiving and should have a nice day against the league's 28th ranked defense against opposing runners. The receivers, Devin Funchess is a C+. He's been serviceable the past couple of weeks, mainly due to the Philly Brown injury. I don't expect a big game from him, though, against a tough Cowboys secondary. Ted Ginn mentioned he'll be back. He's a C-. Not a great matchup here, and he's had some problems holding on to the ball. Greg Olsen, though, is an A. Dallas has been solid against opposing tight ends, but you can't bench this guy. On to the Cowboys side, Tony Romo's a C+. The Panthers are one of only 2 teams that have more INTs than touchdowns allowed on the season. Denver is the other. Romo's a mediocre play at best this week. I'd steer clear. Darren McFadden's a B- here. Strictly a volume play. McFadden gets the majority of the touches, but it's a tough task against a Carolina defense that gives up less than 4 yards per carry on the season and only 7 rushing touchdowns so far. The receivers, Cole Beasley, I'm giving a B- to, and he's the highest of the receivers, the highest grade I'm giving out today. I see the Cowboys attempting to attack Carolina with a quick passing game that utilizes speedy slot guy Beasley. He should be able to get open across the middle. Des Bryant, I'm giving a C+ to. He could be shadowed by Josh Norman, arguably the best cover corner in the league. If you've got a better option, this may be a good opportunity to explore it. Terrence Williams is a C, a viable flex option with Romo under center. Williams, as we know, invisible without Romo, but you're banking on a long shot considering the tough matchup anyway. Jason Witten's a C+, not a great play, but he may be Romo's check-down favorite. How'd that sound to you, Brian?
I would agree with this one. I think you called this matchup very well from my consulting role here. I will agree with you. Good grades. Good grades.
Feels good, my friend. I'm going to go enjoy a turkey leg here in a second. Chicago at Green Bay is the prime time Thanksgiving matchup. Jay Cutler, we begin on the Bears side. He gets a B+ in this one. The Packers are the league's 19th ranked defense against opposing quarterbacks. They give up an average of 255 passing yards per game. They've yielded 13 touchdowns through the air. If he can avoid turning the ball over, he could be a very good sneaky play this week, my opinion. The running game, this is going to be interesting. Jeremy Langford, I'm giving a C to. If Forte returns for this game, which I think he will, Langford's value will take a hit. This is a negative matchup for opposing running backs and could be particularly bad if the Pack get an early lead. Matt Forte, I mentioned, also giving him a C here. I don't expect a ton from him if he plays. He and Langford will likely split backfield duty. I think there's an opportunity for a rushing touchdown in this game, but your guess is as good as mine as to who will get it. For the receivers, it all depends. Does Alshon Jeffrey play or not? He's been limited thus far this week in practice. Let's say he does play. I give him a B in this matchup. The Packers are top 10 against opposing wide receivers on the season, but Jeffrey is a special talent that I believe is matchup proof when he's able to play. And again, that is the question. Marcus Wilson, I give a C+ to. He'll get some looks, but he has no real value unless Jeffrey sits out another game or re-aggravates his injury. As far as tight end goes, I'm going to assume Martellus Bennett plays in this game. Bennett is probably a C+ at best in this matchup. I actually give the better grade to Zach Miller, who's healthy and has performed well as of late. Miller gets a B here. Tight ends are having a decent amount of success against the Packers, and especially if Bennett is limited or can't go. As I said, Miller's a really nice streaming option this week at tight end. On to the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, he's a B+. The Bears don't give up a ton of yardage through the air typically. They're ranked 4th in the league in that department, but they have given up 19 passing touchdowns on the season. Rodgers will get his in what should be an emotional primetime game. By the way, Favre is returning to Lambeau. And in a case like that, you'd think Aaron Rodgers wants to remind everybody why Brett Favre was shown the door in Green Bay in the first place. So the emotions are going to be running high in this one, whether you like it or not. Eddie Lacy's a B-. The Packers backfield committee showed signs of life against a normally tough Vikings defense last week. The Bears give up decent amount of yards on the ground, but they've only surrendered 3 rushing scores on the year. James Starks is a C+, nothing more than a flex consideration this week, and that's being generous. James Jones is a B+. Those of you left Jones for dead after his hot start probably felt the sting after watching him torch the Vikings for 109 yards and a touchdown on a team-high 12 targets last week. Randall Cobb, I have yet to figure out what's wrong with him lately. All I can say, the Bears are 3rd in the league in total yards given up to opposing pass catchers, but they do allow touchdowns now and again, including one to Cobb earlier in the season. Cobb has become a bit of a dart throw, though, in recent weeks. For that reason, I give him a tempered B- grade. Richard Rodgers is a C+. With the multiple injuries to the Green Bay wide receiver core, Rodgers is a guy you need to keep your eye on. That's it for the Thanksgiving matchups, Brian. We're on to Sunday. Who's your first matchup?
All right, I'm going to roll with the Saints and Texans. Drew Brees is back from the bye looking to get things rolling against a pretty decent Texans team that's in their own run at the division. Drew Brees will get a B here because of Houston's corners and the fact he overall just isn't playing very well. Aside from his 7-touchdown game, he's really been nothing and bad for your fantasy team. He's an average QB at best this year. Running back Mark Ingram, he's going to get the A in the bunch here. Not much you can count on for consistency on the Saints roster except for Ingram. The Texans have an average run D, so look for the Saints to use that to their advantage and stabilize on Ingram's 4.6 yards per carry. Probably nothing from Spiller, C-, but you never know when he's going to have that one catch for 70 yards and a touchdown. So he doesn't have that consistent value that I can't buy into. Wide receiver Brandon Cooks is one that I gave up on early, and those who were patient on him are paying off now. B for Cooks, as he is the leading receiver in targets, yards, and touchdowns. Marquise Golston, C+, Willie Snead, B-. While Snead is the second, I would expect the majority of the receiving action to go to tight end Ben Watson this week. He has 10 catches for over 20 yards, and that's 1 a game if you're keeping track, and he has 14% of the targets. So Ben Watson is going to get a B+ out of me. Quarterback Brian Hoyer on the Texans side of the ball, he should be back from that concussion, but either way, have no fear. If you have to swap him out, you can swap in TJ Yates. Either one of those guys this week's going to get a B+. They both have similar approaches to the game, and Yates has shown he could do so effectively. The thing that makes it easier is the Saints' defense and the fact that they have DeAndre Hopkins. Running back Alfred Blue and Jonathan Grimes are splitting snaps pretty effectively. That's a good tongue twister. And each are receiving. Both of those running backs will receive a B, as likely neither will have the lion's share, but they both have been playing well effectively. If you look at kind of what they're doing, they're literally getting half and half all across the board. Wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to get the easy A here against the Saints pass D that's 31st in the league. Against the pass, another frustrating battle on the Texans roster here for me personally. Wide receiver Nate Washington and Cecil Shorts III. Both are splitting time effectively, and nobody wins those battles in the fantasy football game. Washington has that rapport and jive with Hopkins and Hoyer, but he gets bumped for Shorts, which I think is terrible. So a double B- for these guys. just because you never know how it's going to go, and there is no tight end of fantasy value on the Texans roster.
My first Sunday matchup, St. Louis at Cincinnati, begin on the Rams side, and Rams quarterback du jour, whoever it happens to be. I'm leaving them on the bench.
Is that a sandwich?
In fact, it doesn't matter who they trot out there. Bench. They are saying Case Keenum looks like he could play, but it doesn't matter. Todd Gurley is a B+. The Bengals give up about 100 yards per game on the ground, but have allowed only 3 rushing touchdowns on the season. Gurley shouldn't be benched, though, regardless. Tavon Austin is a B. The Rams need to get him more involved than he was last week. That's clear as mud. Kenny Britt, a C. Barely startable grade here, though I'm not touching him personally. Wes Welker's a C as well. He'll get more involved as he gets familiar with the playbook. For now, though, barely worth mentioning. Jared Cook, Lance Kendricks, I'm leaving both on the bench. On to the Bengals side, Andy Dalton, a C+. The Rams are extremely stingy against the pass, allowing only 229 passing yards per game, and only one other NFL team has allowed single-digit touchdowns on the season. Denver has allowed 8, St. Louis only 9. The running game, Giovanni Bernard, I give a B- to. Not a great matchup here, but Bernard should be heavily involved both in the running and the passing game. Jeremy Hill, I gave a C2. Unless the Bengals get up close, Hill's value is pretty nil. You're counting on a touchdown in order to save your fantasy day if you play him. The receivers, A.J. Green is a B-. He's been relatively disappointing lately, but to his credit, has had some really tough matchups. But this is also what I'd consider a tough matchup. Wah, wah, sad trombone for A.J. Green. Marvin Jones, a C+. I don't love the matchup, but I do think Jones could ultimately end up being the most productive Bengals wide receiver, if that's saying anything. I know I gave him the lower grade, but I'm playing it safe here. I don't love the passing game for Cincinnati, although I do like Tyler Eifert a bit. Give him a B+. Despite the Rams being a less than favorable matchup for Bengals wide receivers, they have actually allowed some tight end production over the course of the year. Eifert will be just fine here.
All right, on to the, for the record, I am starting Stafford over Dalton. Just for the record. Let's put that out there.
Well, I don't think I'd disagree with you on that.
Just watch Stafford, 50 points. It's going to be awesome.
Never. No way.
Vikes, Falcons. Teddy Bridgewater, he has a decent matchup here against an average Atlanta pass defense. I'm going to give him a B-, though, and I'll tell you why. He's going to have a tough upfront challenge, and he's going to be forced to make quick decisions, and that running game is going to probably get taken away from him this week. He will have to make those tough throws, so part of that low grade is going to come from those 2 interceptions he's probably going to throw. Adrian Peterson, he is up against a rushing defense that gives up 81 yards per game, and he looked a little angry and chippy last week. It looks like he was going to get himself some penalties, but they didn't call it on him, removing that helmet on the field, so he's probably going to get himself in trouble. So I'm going to give AP an average B. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs, B-. I think the rookie's cooling off. The defense is figuring out his weaknesses, and they're pressing him at the line pretty hard. If you're looking at the whole product, he only has 573 yards on the season, but he does have 12 catches for over 20 yards, so he has that big play, breakaway ability. Mike Wallace, C+, he's getting 17% of the targets, but only averages 11 yards per catch and is often overthrown. The thing you have to remember is that Teddy averages 188 yards per game. So you really have to think twice about starting a receiver there. Tight end Kyle Rudolph, he had the game of his year last week. I wouldn't expect that again. He has had 13 catches for over the past 7 weeks. So don't buy into the hype. Just leave him back on your bench. C- if you have to give him a grade. He may snag a touchdown, but nothing else. Quarterback Matt Ryan, he takes his subpar year and will likely be challenged on their home turf. Ryan has a 65% completion rate, but his TDs are lacking, 15 in 10 games to be exact. B for Matt Ryan against a better than average Vikings defense and possibly Devonta Freeman-less offense. So make sure you watch this concussion protocol. You never know when they're going to yank somebody Sunday morning when they wake up out of bed. Either way, you do have that bright side with Tevin Coleman. So if you can, go out, pick him up, hold him on, wait for that game time decision. Tevin Coleman, he's not that bad of a guy. He once was showing promise, and just kind of the way the season started off, he never really had that opportunity to come back and show why he was the way he was. So whoever's going to go, it's still the Vikings, and they've got that a pretty good defense. So I'll go with a B- for either of the running backs who goes. Wide receiver Julio Jones leads the team in targets with an astounding 33% of those targets. B+ for Julio Jones. Scary stat for the Falcons. The next highest targeted pass catcher is Devonta Freeman. So that's kind of bad when your running back is also the second highest targeted person. Wide receiver Leonard Hankerson could be the sneak play here, B, while defense is rolling to Julio Jones. Roddy White is technically the number 2, but doesn't play like it. He only has 254 yards. Jacob Tamme, he has been on the decline since posting a 100-yard game a few weeks ago. C+ if you must.
Brian, let's take a little break, shall we?
Let's do it.
How about the pop quiz?
Never mind. Let's go back to matchups.
We've got plenty more matchups as we are through the bye weeks completely now. So we have a full gamut of matchups still to get through. The bargain bin still on the way as well. But 3 very tough questions for Brian. And we begin with question number 1. Brian, the fantasy playoffs are fast approaching, and at this point, everyone's sizing up their potential seed. In many leagues, all too often, a tiebreaker is needed in order to determine where you may be seated and ultimately who your opponent will be. The question is, what should be the undisputed tiebreaker in situations like these after you look at the records?
I am a proponent of total points scored.
Nice.
This is fantasy football. You are in it to score the most points possible. And this is the importance of shows like ours. Because while you may think, I've got good matchups all the way through, it doesn't really matter who's in my flex. Oh, but it does. Because if you have somebody in there who gets you 5 points, or if you listen to the grades, we gave a person some pretty good stats and a reason why, and they score 15, that's 10-point difference. If you do that over a couple of weeks, that's some pretty good points, and that decides many of times whether you are in or out of your fantasy football playoffs.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. The correct answer is total points. I see too many leagues determine a playoff picture incorrectly. The ultimate measure after those wins and losses should be a look at your entire season's worth of scoring. Too many variables involved in head-to-head, in my opinion. Bye weeks, injuries, matchups, etc. Bench points is simply ridiculous. These players aren't in your starting lineup for a reason. If your league isn't breaking ties with total points, you're doing it wrong. Tell your commissioner we told you so. On to question number 2. If I gave you the choice, Brian, between taking any NFL quarterback you wanted for the rest of the season or the quarterback that plays the New Orleans Saints every week from here on out, who would you choose?
Without knowing what's coming up, the Saints make everybody look good. They really do. And firing of Rob Ryan, the whole 9 yards, I will take anybody who plays the Saints.
The correct answer is whomever faces the
Yes.
Saints. Let's say you were to choose option A, likely fantasy's number 1 quarterback Tom Brady, who currently averages 332 yards passing per game, has thrown for 25 touchdowns and run for 2 on the season. He's putting up, on average, just over 29 fantasy points per game in standard scoring formats and has only been picked off 3 times. The Saints' defense is allowing 293 yards passing per game, has given up 28 passing touchdowns with only 4 INTs on the season. Because Brady has matchups against the Broncos and Jets between now and Week 17, the edge most definitely goes to the quarterback that faces the Saints. Isn't that something?
That's crazy.
Question number 3. Matt Forte is expected back this week as the Bears travel to Lambeau to take on the Packers. You own both he and rookie Jeremy Langford, who has performed very well in his absence. Who's the better back to have the rest of the season?
I'm still going to say Forte because Forte is Forte for a reason. He didn't lose his job because of bad play. He lost his job because of injury. I wouldn't go dumping Langford by any means. I would hold on to him because Forte could not be a Bear for very much longer, but I will tip my hat back to Forte because he is Matt Forte.
The answer is Forte, and for that final point you just made, not just because he's the proven commodity in the running and passing game, but also because he's likely done in Chicago after the season. Why would the Bears, clearly a non-playoff team, risk their future in Langford when they can ride Forte into the ground from here on out? And I think that's exactly what they're going to do. Jumping right back into the matchups, New York Giants at Washington. Begin with the Giants and Eli Manning. I give him an A. He's got all his weapons relatively healthy in a running game that scares absolutely no one, so they will be taking to the air. Rashad Jennings is a B-. Washington gives up the third most rushing yards to opposing backs, but has only given up 5 rushing touchdowns on the season. Jennings, a mediocre play this week at best. As far as the receivers go, Odell Beckham is an A. The Skins rank 28th against opposing receivers, giving up over 26 fantasy points per game on average in standard scoring leagues, so I like him a lot. Ruben Randall I like too. He's a B. Good flex option this week considering the plus matchup. Even through Dwayne Harris, a barely startable grade of C-. If you're desperate, you should consider him in your flex spot. On to Larry Donnell, who finally will be returning to the lineup after his neck injury has held him out the past few weeks. I give him a C here. He'll be back on the field, no doubt, but I don't expect big things. It isn't a great matchup for him. On to Washington. Kirk Cousins is a B. The Giants are a bottom third pass defense, having surrendered some pretty massive games this season to opposing quarterbacks, but Cousins isn't the kind of quarterback you could put on par with guys like Drew Brees, for example. Expect a good, not great game out of Cousins this week. The runners, Chris Thompson, a B-, especially in PPR formats. Thompson should provide a decent stat line considering Morris's health concerns and Jones' lack of ball security. Alfred Morris, I'm leaving on the bench. He's considered day-to-day on the injury report. Even if he plays, I'm not sure I'd consider him. Matt Jones, a C+. He may continue to get the bulk of the carries against a middle-of-the-road Giants run defense, but those fumbles, man, they scare the heck out of me. For the receivers, Deshaun Jackson, I give a B to. Washington's biggest scoring threat, not named Reed. Jamison Crowder, a B-, should see a decent amount of targets, especially if the Giants get up early. Pierre Garçon, a C. He's not seeing the targets requisite of a flex option. Jordan Reed has a bit of an MCL sprain. I think he's going to play this week regardless, and I give him an A here. One of the best tight end matchups a guy could have, actually. The Giants rank 31st in the league against opposing tight ends. So there you have it. Jordan Reed's your play.
I agree. He's been pretty good, pretty close to one of the best that you can find this year. Pretty awesome. All right, on to the Bucs Colts. Jameis Winston, he's been throwing up some great numbers. Look for him to do it again. The Colts have the 29th worst passing defense, and Jameis can surely have 4 touchdowns this week. You heard it here first. For some reason, I am in love with this kid. I never wanted to say it. It's making me going to puke, but Jameis Winston, I'm giving him an A this week. There's no reason he can't do it again. My friend, he's a Bucs fan, completely angry with the pick on draft day, completely angry with how they're playing now, and he is mad that they have 5 wins. He did not want this guy to work out. Looks like he is. Running back Doug Martin, he's going to get an A following last week and more of the same situation. He just had that killer game, didn't get those touchdowns, but he didn't need them when he got 230-some yards. It's all right. He bumped up his yards per carry to 5 even. Look for him to build on that as well. Charles Sims, he's going to get a B here as well, a B-. He's going to get some work, but not a ton. Wide receiver Mike Evans, B. Drops are still an issue, and VJax has taken away a lot of those targets, so now he has less balls to drop. VJax, for me, is the better play. I'm going to give A for Vincent Jackson. And what's up with Austin Seferian-Jenkins? Don't know. Tired of wasting my breath. But if he plays, B, he might start, as you said in our pre-meeting, that he's probably going to play in sometimes in like 2027, I think is what you called. You could be right.
Yeah, I said, I hear he's coming back mid-December 2027.
It's looking like it. Just you never know what's up with this, so don't count on it. But, hey, if you hold on to him, it might pay off someday. Quarterback Matt Hasselbeck on the Colts side of the ball, B-. Definitely threw up a stinker last week, but the Bucs pass defense is a little bit different than Atlanta's. I would expect to see an average day, But wow, did you see what he did with the Honorable Mr. Bradshaw that Andy called in the bargain bin? Made a lot of people happy on Sunday with that pick. Bradshaw B-. I don't expect the same thing, but he is great at his little rapport with Hasselbeck here. Kind of, I'm sure, is stinging Frank Gore a little bit, who's going to get his B. He had only 14 touches and 5 receptions, but was not a major impact in that game. That was all Bradshaw. Wide receiver T.Y. Hilton virtually shut out in Atlanta for T.Y.'s normal numbers. Shouldn't be shut out here, but won't be able to go deep, so a B for T.Y. And good grief, Moncrief, he's going to get his average B-. He's been reliable, and even if reliable is mediocre, so he's going to probably get 40 or 50 yards. It's fun to watch a semi-bad offense that somehow wins games. It's just I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to see how the Colts are doing it, and who knows what's going to happen. But I can guarantee you Colby Fleener will not be a major impact. Tight end Colby Fleener, a C.
I wish I had taken my own advice last week on Bradshaw, to be honest with you. I mean, my week 11 was that bad. I didn't win one fantasy game, and I'm in a half dozen leagues, as you know. I did not win one game.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I needed the win and a couple, but it just didn't happen, and it wasn't for lack of effort. I didn't get blown out. The other person sucked just as bad as I did, but I sucked a little worse.
That's right, and that's the worst right there. And it's even worse when you make a great call like Bradshaw in the bargain bin and go, geez, I really could have used that this week. Buffalo at Kansas City on the Bills side. Tyrod Taylor, no sure bet he'll play. I give him a C- if he does. Even if he does play, the Chiefs have looked downright dominant lately, so I'm not sure you'd start him anyway. LaShawn McCoy's a B. The Chiefs are nearly as stingy against the run as they are against the pass. They're currently 5th against opposing running backs, allowing less than 15 fantasy points per game to opposing runners. But McCoy is a volume guy and should see plenty of touches. So even if he only averages 3 yards a carry and touches the ball 20 times, that's 60 yards, and then receiving on top of that. Carlos Williams is a C. You're counting on a touchdown from him, which isn't a good bet against this Chiefs defense. Sammy Watkins, a B-. He likely draws coverage from Sean Smith, one of the league's best shutdown corners. I wouldn't go so far as to predict he'll be nearly shut out like he was on Monday in Foxborough, but I don't expect a big game here either. Chris Hogan is a C+, the Bills' most efficient pass catcher last Monday. Hogan caught 6 passes for 95 yards and should continue to be targeted 6 to 9 times per game out of the slot. Robert Woods is a C-. He's been average at best since his 84-yard, 1-touchdown stat line back in Week 7. Charles Clay, I'm leaving on the bench, too wildly inconsistent for my liking. On to the Chiefs side, Alex Smith is a C. The Bills are beatable through the air, having allowed 18 passing touchdowns on the season. But Smith isn't the quarterback that'll get you more than a 250-2 stat line, even when the matchup is insanely good. If you're okay with that, then he's your man this week, because that's probably what he'll end up with. Spencer Ware is a C. His value is tied to West's injury status. If West can go on Sunday, Ware has not a ton of value. If West is out, Ware is a borderline running back 3 flex option. West, I mentioned, I give him a C. He's listed as day-to-day on the injury report. Not a great matchup regardless, but if he does play, he should be considered in your flex spot. Jeremy Maclin, the only wide receiver I'll mention here, a B grade, should continue to be the Chiefs' biggest threat in the passing game. The Bills have given up 18 touchdowns through the air this season, so not a terrible matchup by any stretch. Travis Kelce is a C+. Consistent targets, receptions, and yardage. No touchdowns since Week 1, though.
Oakland, Tennessee. The Raiders definitely went off the rails on a crazy train in Detroit, and it will not get an easier matchup in Tennessee as the Titans are 3rd in the league in defending the pass. Derek Carr will try to rebound and should have some success, but will need his supporting cast to step up in a big way. B- for Carr. He definitely took one on the chin last week, and it's going to get a whole lot tougher. Running back Latavius Murray, he's going up against the Titans. They give up 110 on the ground. Should be good for the big guys, so I'm going to give Murray the A here. I definitely think they feed him early and often to soften up the defense. take a couple of shots downfield with wide receiver Amari Cooper. B minus for Cooper as the Titans will roll coverage his way as the Lions did in the week prior, which seemed to work pretty dang good. Someone needs to show up on Sunday, and I am guessing it's going to be Michael Crabtree. Just 50 yards out of the guy, but I look for him to finish the day on the top of the leaderboard for receptions and yardage. So I'm going to give a B plus to Crab Apples. For the wide receivers, after those two guys, it's a huge drop-off. Seth Robert is the number 3, and he only has 240 yards receiving, so there's nothing else there. Tight end Michael Rivera is the same, no start there. Quarterback Marcus Mariota on the Titans side of the ball, he gets a chance to redeem himself here. He's up against a bad pass defense. Best ailment for that cure. B for Mariota, we have to remember who his receivers are, and it's not getting much better. He does get a little bit of relief this week. Running back Antonio Andrews should have some success against the Raiders' 22nd ranked run defense, but if the Raiders come out swinging, he could be an afterthought as they might have to be playing catch-up. I will give Andrews a B-. Wide receiver Kendall Wright, he should be back and give Mariota that support. They did have a good connection early on in the season when Mariota was looking like today's Jameis Winston. So let's not forget who he was at the beginning when he did have Kendall Wright. So I'm going to give a B for Wright. You never know what to expect, but I think they're going to carry some of that early chemistry they had. Wide receiver Harry Douglas, B-, and Dorial Green Beckham, C. Tight end Delaney Walker, he's my favorite, always on this roster. He's always good potential to get 100 yards, so an A start for tight end Delaney Walker.
And so it didn't shock you when I asked you before the show started if you knew who led the NFL in receptions for tight ends. And you did guess Delaney Walker, which was a wonderful guess because that's absolutely correct. Here's another brain teaser for you. Let's see if you know it off the top of your head.
All right.
If the NFL draft were today, who would have the number 1 pick?
The Ravens.
Wrong. The answer is involved in my next matchup, the San Diego Chargers.
What?
I know. Doesn't that just sound shocking to you?
Well, I like to reminisce, and I like to talk about the woulda, shoulda, couldas.
Yeah.
I'm a Lions fan. Huge year last year, rolling in this year. We get stomped in a mud hole out in San Diego. And what a turnaround for San Diego. They are just garbage. Wow, I thought it was the Ravens, but wow, San Diego. Gross.
They would have the number 1 pick if the draft were today. Anyway, my next matchup, San Diego and Jacksonville. On the Chargers side, Phillip Rivers, a B+. He should bounce back this week against Jacksonville's 27th ranked defense against opposing quarterbacks that allow an average of 263 yards per game through the air, and they've given up 17 passing touchdowns on the season. Danny Woodhead is a B. I can't imagine a scenario where the Chargers completely abandon their best weapon this week. Woodhead not only is a PPR monster, he's also the team's most efficient runner. The other runner is Melvin Gordon. He gets a C in this matchup, barely worth a look at flex. Gordon's rookie season, been a major bust, at least in my opinion. Stevie Johnson, a B-. The Jags have been pretty stout against opposing wide receivers this season, ranking 13th in the league against the position. Johnson remains Rivers' best option there and should get some targets. Dontrell Inman is a C. He'll also contribute, but falls to 4th in the pecking order with Woodhead, Gates, and Johnson ahead of him. Speaking of Gates, a B+ here. He needs to be more involved in the San Diego passing game. Jacksonville not especially good against opposing tight ends, ranking 22nd against the position in terms of fantasy production. Could be his health, I suppose, but he really needs to get back on track if the Chargers don't want to end up with that first pick. Blake Bortles on the Jags side is a B. San Diego's about as mediocre a pass defense as there is in the NFL. Bortles and his group of young weapons will be just fine this week. TJ Yeldon, an A. No team gives up more fantasy production to opposing running backs than San Diego does. They're dead last against the position, giving up nearly 25 fantasy points per game in standard leagues. The receivers, Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns, I'm giving them both a B in this matchup. Robinson likely gets a heavy dose of cover corner Jason Verrett, who's been very good over the course of the season. Still, Robinson belongs in your lineup, as does Hurns, who will probably get Brandon Flowers in coverage, who's been a pretty massive disappointment this season. Julius Thomas is your tight end. give him a B. He showed some signs of life last Thursday and should be more consistently targeted going forward.
All right, on to the Dolphins-Jets here. This is a East Coast battle. Quarterback Ryan Tannehill, he has a shot at success if Revis doesn't play, but it sounds like he's going to, so you can go ahead and drop Tannehill down to a C+. He's just a mediocre fantasy quarterback, and that's all the reality is. While 11th in pass defense, the Jets are 3rd in rush defense, which is bad news for one running back named Lamar Miller. While Miller has some good games lately, I believe it stops here, so we're going to give Lamar Miller a B-. The Jets are just too stout up front, and it is possible they will be playing from behind. So wide receiver Rashard Matthews, he's going to get a C+. While being number 1 on the depth chart, he doesn't get a whole bunch of targets. If you look at it, Jarvis Landry actually gets the majority of the targets as the number 2. So he gets a B- there because targets equals production. Wide receiver Kenny Stills, desperation play at best, C-, but he shocks you from time to time with a big play and a touchdown. Tight end Jordan Cameron, disappointing. He only has 289 yards and 2 touchdowns on the year for him, so no start for Jordan Cameron. Quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick, he said he is the starter and he is the best shot to win. So Geno Smith, sit back on the bench. I'm going to give Fitz the B+ here. He threw those 2 costly interceptions last week, and it just kind of went downhill. But you always look for a good uptick, and I think the Miami's defense is not what it was made out to be, so look for Fitz to have a good day. Running back Chris Ivory looks to improve his 4.1 yards per carry against the 30th ranked run defense in the Dolphins. They were hyped to be one of the best, but it's just not happening. So B+ there. Wide receiver Brandon Marshall, he gets an A, 29% of the targets, 7 touchdowns. He has a great matchup this week, and will get plenty of help from his partner in crime, Eric Decker, who will also have a very good grade at a B+. These two are virtually neck and neck in yards per catch and are tied for touchdowns. Marshall has the overall yardage, but both are playing very well, and no one isn't even close to matching their production, so it's a steep fall off after those two. Jeremy Kearley, known to snag a few, will get a C-. Not worth a start, even if you really, really have a desperation need here because of injuries, and there is no tight end of value on that Jets roster.
Arizona at San Francisco. On the Cards side, Carson Palmer's an A. San Fran ranked 29th versus opposing quarterbacks, giving up an average of over 23 fantasy points per game to the position. Palmer is better than your average quarterback, so I expect around 300 passing yards and at least 2 passing scores from him, probably more. Chris Johnson, also an A. Only the Chargers give up more fantasy production to opposing backs than the Niners do. Johnson is in line for a big game, assuming he shoulders the majority of the workload, which he has been. Andre Ellington is a B-. Until we see his usage increase, he's no more than a flex consideration in a great matchup like this. David Johnson, just too hit or miss to count on, so I'm leaving him on the bench. Larry Fitzgerald an A-, plain and simple. The Niners have nobody that can stop him. Johnny Brown is a B. Good opportunity to score a long touchdown or more against a Niners secondary that is used to seeing opposing receivers blow by them. J.J. Nelson, a C. Since the Cardinals appear to want to take it slow with Michael Floyd's hammy, Nelson may be called upon again in 3 wide sets. Wouldn't expect a repeat of last Sunday night, however, but he has shown that he is capable. Darren Fells is your tight end, leaving him on the bench. Speaking of the bench, that's where Blaine Gabbert can sit. Sean Drawn, I give a C to. Saw a ton of targets in the passing game last week. Didn't amount to much, but if you're in a PPR, that's not a bad deal at all. On to the receivers. I think the only one of note here is Anquan Bolden, and he gets a B. With Patrick Peterson questionable with an injury, Bolden may have a decent day here against a normally killer Cardinals defense. Garrett Selleck is your tight end, a C-, barely worth a look. Selleck's getting the majority of the snaps with Vernon Davis now in Denver.
All right, Steelers, Seahawks. Big Ben good and rested. I am aware he's going to Seattle and playing the 12th man. However, B+ for Big Ben, as the Steelers notice that the Bengals are faltering and they need to get going. They're in that wild card hunt. Watch for Big Ben and company to make a statement win here in Seattle. So B+ for Roethlisberger. Running back D'Angelo Williams, he's going to get a B+ as well. Just, I know you're thinking like, what are you doing? Check this out. 10.5 yards per catch and 5 yards per carry for D'Angelo Williams. That is insane for a running back to have maintained both of those statistics with the touches that he's had. Wide receiver Antonio Brown, automatic A with Big Ben taking those snaps. But look at the facts. Big Ben plays. His lowest yardage was 108, and Ben didn't even play that full game. Last time they played, he was hurt, had 139 and 2 touchdowns. Facts, and that's what we stick to here. Wide receiver Martavis Bryant, he's going to get a B. Someone's going to get hit with added pressure, and I think that's going to be Bryant with too many opportunities on the field and play calling, moving the ball around plenty to keep Seattle on its heels. I think Bryant's best shot is a yards after catch. Tight end Heath Miller, he will get a B as well. He will be available to take checkdowns and is always Ben's safety net when the pressure is coming. Quarterback Russell Wilson, he will be held in check most of the night. He's going to get a B-. He's not the guy he was last year for fantasy value. Typically, Wilson can have a good score with his feet, but surely the Steelers linebackers are aware and will adjust as such. They will force Wilson to throw as he averages 219 yards per game, so nothing great there. Running backs, well, you heard it, Marshawn Lynch hasn't been ruled out, but likely will be, so look for Thomas Rawls. I don't think it really matters, but let me give you this stat here. Rawls is better than Lynch in yards per carry, runs longer than 20 yards, and yards per game. So think about that. Rawls, it makes no difference who's going to go. Still going to get the same grade. Either one that starts. It's going to be tough, though, I think. So I'm going to give them a B-. They're going to be playing from behind. And that's just the way it's going to have to go. Wide receiver Doug Baldwin, he gets 19% of the targets and is the leading receiver by 9 yards, tied for most touchdowns. B for Baldwin, C+ for Curse. And the surprise guy here, Tyler Lockett, C+. Russell Wilson will have to spread the ball around, and Lockett could be the unguarded person that slips down the seam for a score or two. Tight end Jimmy Graham is quietly the leader in targets and catches over 20 yards in Seattle. Look for him to have plenty of action in this week. B+ for Jimmy Graham.
Going to boogie through these final two matchups so we can get to our bargain bin before the end of the show. New England, Denver. On the Patriots side, Tom Brady, a B. On the road against the league's best pass defense, I won't go so far as to say Brady should ride the pine this week, but if it comes down to him or someone else with a really great matchup, I'd probably go with the guy with the better matchup, to be honest. LeGarrette Blount, a B-. This is a really tough matchup. Denver, middle of the pack against opposing runners, allowing over 90 yards per game on the ground, 8 touchdowns on the season. But because they'll be focused so much on the passing game, LeGarrette Blount might not even see the field all that much. James White, a B-. Splitting Dion Lewis's role with Brandon Bolden, White remains the better scoring option between the two, figures to be involved in the short passing game. Brandon LaFell, a C+, not in love with his matchup this week. Likely opposite Aqib Talib, the bigger of the two Broncos corners. Danny Amendola, if he plays, a C. He looked to be Brady's favorite target post-Edelman. He'll likely see a lot of Chris Harris, though, who is one of the league's absolute best cover corners. So, yikes. And Rob Gronkowski, I give a B to. Not that he needs the chemistry he had with Brady earlier in the season to come back. It's been missing as of late. The dude's matchup proof, but it hasn't been great lately. On the Denver side, Brock Osweiler, a B. He threw for 252 and 2 last week, and hey, that's roughly what New England allows to opposing quarterbacks on a weekly basis. Coincidence? Hardly. The running backs, Hillman and Anderson, give a slight nod to Hillman and the C grade because he's the better pass catcher of the two Broncos backs. Anderson, the C-. New England has given up the second fewest rushing yards in the league thus far and only allowed 5 rushing touchdowns on the season. Demaryius Thomas, an A. The Patriots may try to scheme him out of the game like they did with Sammy Watkins last week, but I got to be honest, Thomas is just better than that and will be. Emmanuel Sanders, if he does play, gets a C here. Even his presence would help the Broncos' passing game in this big matchup. The tight ends, Vernon Davis, I give a better grade to than Owen Daniels, a B-. Targets and opportunities on the increase since he joined the team. This may be a breakout of sorts here. Owen Daniels, a C-. He's phasing out of the offense as Davis continues to learn the playbook. On to Monday night.
Ravens-Browns, sure to be an awesome Monday night game, probably only if you live in Maryland or Cleveland.
God.
It's going to be terrible.
Unreal.
So Matt Schaub, that's cool. Good news, it's the Browns defense, one of the worst in the league. Bad news, it's Matt Schaub. I'm going to give him a B just in case.
What?
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Cleveland's terrible. So there you go. they have to get some sort of yards here. This could be a hockey score or a basketball score game. So who knows? Let's do it. The reason is because I think the supporting cast for Schaub is there. Buck Allen, if you're looking to pick him up, type in Javorius Allen. You can't type in Buck Allen and pick him up. He's going to get a B+ here. I'll tell you why. Ravens are going to have to run the ball, given it's Schaub, but the playbook is friendly, and the Browns are the 30th worst in giving up 138 yards per game on the ground. So look for the quick drop-offs from Schaub to Buck Allen and get that going. He's been playing this the whole year, so it's not like he's coming off the bench. Wide receiver Kamar Aiken, B-. He should get the main work, but I am concerned. Look for him to get in if he can separate from Joe Hayden. Chris Givens, a B-. I definitely see either of them having a good day, just not both. Watch out for Crockett Gilmore, B+. Them little quick passes are going to be what saves Schaub here. I hear you laughing in the background. I'm trying real hard not to go there.
Say quick dumps.
All right,
just say
all
it.
Right. Tight end Crockett Gilmore, B-. He's going to get them quick dumps there, and he should have a decent day. Yes. Quarterback Johnny Manziel. Oh, wait a minute. That's a scratch. So let's just move on from the Browns roster, shall we? No, it's not that bad. The Ravens are terrible. So just watch for McCown. He's probably going to have a B+, right around in there. He knows the receivers. He'll do fine. The running backs, the Crow, Duke Johnson, no idea who's going to do what. Either are going to be terrible. C+ for both of the running backs there. I would take Duke Johnson. He has that ability to catch those passes. Wide receiver Travis Benjamin, he's going to get the B+, 15.3 yards per catch. Brian Hartline, pay attention. He's going to get the nods with Hawkins likely out on that still concussion protocol. I'm not saying he's going to do it, but B- for Hartline. Tight end Gary Barnage, he's going to get the A as he always does because he is Gary Barnage, and you don't need me to tell you who he is.
All right, on to the bargain bin. These are guys, many of whom you can find on the waiver wire. Plug right in and get some decent fantasy production from. We begin at the quarterback position. Brian, who's your bargain bin pick?
Jameis Winston. Pains me to say it, but with Vincent Jackson back, this guy is looking pretty sharp. It looks like he's gone through a little bit of early growing pains, and he's got a good matchup.
I took Brian Hoyer, the low-hanging fruit. And I am not ashamed to admit Brian Hoyer's my guy, facing a Saints defense that gives up more fantasy production to the quarterback position than anyone else in the league. That was way too easy. Who's your running back?
Running back Buck Allen. Just like I said, he's not coming off the bench. He's been playing. He's been getting reps. He knows the playbook, and the Browns are terrible. And it's on Monday night, so it's going to be awesome. Just trust me, Buck Allen. He's got the experience to do so. He can bail people out.
My running back is TJ Yeldon. Chances are he's been sitting on your bench more weeks than not. Here's a golden opportunity to plug him in and watch him run over the league's worst defense against the run, the Chargers, who have all but given up on the season. If not now for Yeldon, Brian, when?
Well, maybe when the Chargers move to Los Angeles in a couple of years.
There you have it. Who's your receiver?
Wide receiver Brian Hartline. For as much as we're ragging on Monday, two of my bargain bins are playing there. Brian Hartline, he's out there. Go pick him up in that flex if you're hurt by other injuries. There's a very good chance he's going to be catching a lot of passes on Monday night.
Vincent Jackson, Tampa. He's mine. We also what Jameis Winston was able to do against the 30th ranked pass defense, the Eagles in Philadelphia last weekend. Now the Bucs get the 28th ranked pass defense, the Colts. Having Jackson back in the lineup, obviously huge for the entire Bucs passing game, as he caught 4 passes for 56 yards and a touchdown last week. Don't be surprised if he does something similar this week. If you missed any part of the show, feel free to revisit anytime via iTunes, Stitcher, or the Libsyn website. If we've helped you in any way, shape, or form, let us know by leaving a review or rating the 515 Fantasy Football Show. We thank you for that in advance. Leading up to kickoff, Brian and I always happy to answer any lineup questions you may have on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football, Twitter at 515 Fantasy, or via email 515fantasy@gmail.com. Brian, anything to add?
Yeah, just because you don't need the roster help right now, you might need it in the next coming weeks. Start looking ahead. Plan out weeks 14, 15, and 16. Look at the defenses. Look at the matchups. You might need to burn some waiver wire action now on some wide receivers or running back matchups in the near future. So stock up now while you can.
We appreciate you taking a listen and wish you not only the best of luck in Week 12, but a very happy Thanksgiving to you and yours as well. For Brian Eikenberry, I'm Andy Hall, and this is the 515 Fantasy Football Show.